Hello, and welcome back to the Conscious Contact podcast. My name is Genay, and I'm here with my co-host, Susan. And I'm going to let you tell me about this because I have no idea what all today is going to encompass.
Okay, so our topic is quitting.
Mm-hmm.
And I started thinking about this because there's a whole thing in the media when at the time we're recording this, it's early November of 2022, and there's this whole thing in the media about quiet quitting. And I know, and the deal is people are just doing what they are, like, they're just doing what's in their job description, and they're not, working early, staying late, etc.
Yeah.
And how devastating this is to the workplace. And I'm thinking, like, why are we fired up about this whole quitting thing when isn't that just like drawing boundaries? And that seems like a great thing to me, that people are fulfilling their work responsibilities and then going and living the life that they're supposed to be living. So anyway,
yeah, it's what they should have been doing in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I feel like as a person who talks about productivity a lot, I feel like that the whole quiet quitting thing is like, oh, I should write about it, I should speak about it, blah, blah, blah. I'm not super interested in that because that's all I really have to say. Like,
Yeah.
good on ya.
Yeah. I'm confused as to why it's called quiet quitting when they're not quitting.
Because
Like, are they expecting to be fired for just doing their basic job functions? I don't know.
No, the idea is instead of doing 150%, you're quitting going above and beyond. You're like not doing what you did last year. You're quitting your, like, if I was saying, like, if I did 100, and I don't believe this because you cannot do more than 100%.
Yeah.
But let's say that I was working 60 hours a week. And this actually was me, like, in my 20s. Like, I would work 60 plus hours a week, work on the weekends, et cetera, et cetera. And then when I just worked 40 hours a week, I had really negative performance reviews because I was not doing my job. Well, that's because I went over and above, and that was all me.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea is, well, I was quitting my responsibilities, quote unquote responsibilities.
The whole thing is just so convoluted and ridiculous to me.
It is, and I think it is super hyped up to have people just have something to rant about.
It's a soundbite, and it's like a self-victimization that's your fault to begin with. It's weird.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. So So anyway, that got me started on the concept of quitting, which is a lot more of a hot topic that swirls around in my brain, and the two sides of my brain, and the angel and the demon on the two sides.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what launched the conversation for me for quitting, because how I was raised is winners never quit and quitters never win. This goes back to the athletic background. And for a long, long time when I was doing endurance events, I had this mantra of never forfeit an entry fee.
Mm-hmm.
So the number of times I've raced sick and injured and I just didn't want to, and I was signing up because whatever. So why is not quitting valued so much
I don't
in
know.
culture?
I don't know, because I'm the opposite. I quit shit all the time. Like,
what are the last couple of things, or what stands out to you?
Learning piano. I'm going to say I took a pause on the sewing thing. I've not quit the sewing thing, but I've taken a pause. There's, busy season of life and all of that jazz.
Yeah.
I quit stuff all the time. Normally I don't have an issue with it other than substances. That was a very long process of quitting.
Mm-hmm.
But I was not raised with that background at all. I was involved in sports when I was young, but not as I grew and went into like middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear people talk about that all the time. And it's something that is so interesting to me because I fail with abandon Like, I just
I
don't
love
care.
that.
Like, which is not healthy. The other side of that is not healthy. I obviously I like to succeed, but it also goes back to the fact that I'm not a perfectionist either. I
Mm-hmm.
am a done is better than perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not, like, I don't sit up late at night and think about the last YouTube video I posted of us that may have probably had editing issues because I'm new to editing it. Like, I don't think about it at all. Like, I just
Yeah.
do it and I'm like, that's good enough. And I
Yeah.
just move on from there.
Why does that, or how does that, because when we talked about the reading or the books episode, you said the whole idea of DNFing a book, about quitting, abandoning it,
Yeah.
was new to you when you saw all the books that I had marked DNF, which is do
Yeah.
not finish.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting. And I wrote it down, the fail with abandon, which I just feel like is delightful. Like
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that
It's
feels so
great.
freeing.
Yeah.
But not for books for you at the beginning, huh?
Well, I think that it was more of me being such a voracious reader. That stopping reading a book, like, that was never an option, period. Or I definitely would have done it, and now I do it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It didn't make sense to me just because of how I used to read. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, you're gonna read this, and if you don't like it, oh well, and you can't start another one until you finish this. And that was
Yeah.
just, I thought that's what you did.
That feeling, if you could multiply that to like my whole 48 years and 6 foot tallness, that expansive exponential increase, that is how I feel in
Oh
my
my
life.
gosh.
Yeah.
Oof.
It turns my stomach even thinking about it. And it's so unsustainable.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
That what it turns into is not trying things because I can never quit them and let them go.
Ah.
And just an extreme case of the fuck it's. Like that's the only way I can ever get out of something, is to be like, and just like, I picture just like throwing it off a cliff. So when you're saying like you put a pause on the sewing, I see that as like gently setting it down, and I'm looking across the room here, and it's got like this beautiful place of honor with your books and the and how it's set up.
Yeah.
Your sewing machine does.
Yeah, yeah. There are
So
plans to pick it up.
Yeah, you're
yeah.
setting it down, not like taking a baseball bat to it.
No, yeah. It doesn't give me like a huge rush to stop something, or I don't get a lot of like pushback.
Mm-hmm.
It is kind of like a nothingness, which again, like, is not great. It means that I get super invested in something at the beginning when I start it, like a new hobby or whatever. And then slowly I just stop caring, and then I'm done. And I can't tell you when that switch flips, but it just does. And then I'm over it. Like, I bought Luke, he saw this jacket when we were traveling somewhere. It was a jean jacket with all these cool, like, vintage Marvel patches on it.
Yep.
And it was so expensive. And I was like, oh, I could just buy patches and a jacket and embroidery thread and make that for him for Christmas. Well, okay, so that Christmas came, I had bought everything. So I gave it to him all separate. And I was like, I'm going to make this for you.
So awesome.
Like, I promise I'm going to make this for you.
Yeah.
He bought some more patches to go with it that he found that he liked. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It's going to be great. That was like 3 Christmases ago. And all the stuff is still sitting upstairs waiting to be done.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I love the idea of it. And I like will constantly remind myself, oh, you need to do that thing. But then it's just life comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm making dinner and doing the laundry and vacuuming and, and it's just like that goes out the window, and then I shift my focus to something else, whether that's the boards that I'm on or whether that's whatever I'm obsessed with at that particular point in time.
Yeah.
So it's not healthy the other way either, just so you know.
Right. Which I think is why I didn't want to talk about quiet quitting, because we're both like, that's dumb.
That's dumb.
And
Yeah.
that's a super short podcast.
Yeah, right? And we're finished. Yeah.
Right. But I think it's really important for ourselves and for each other. And I would suggest everybody listening, because there are 2 sides to every character defect has a
asset.
Asset.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Because and it's interesting how you're saying about, you're excited to start a project, and that is probably where I am afraid to sometimes start things. Like, I probably would have never been like, let's do video, if it hadn't been like on the list of things we literally talked about the first day we decided to do this.
Yeah.
But, and this comes up in my marriage too, like, I will nag the shit out of somebody to get us over the finish line and get the project done. And I think there are pros and cons to that too.
Yes. Yeah. I need motivation, and I'm lucky Luke is my partner in that. And I say motivation because that's legitimately the definition I'm talking about. You can go back and listen to our motivation versus determination episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I do need him to light a fire under my ass sometimes. And he'll remind me, comically, gently, or sometimes harshly when I need it. Like, hey, remember that thing that you were super excited about? Like, because he wants to see me happy, and he saw how jazzed I was about it. And he's like, what the fuck, Genay? Like, it's just gone now, and you are moving on to something different.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you have known me for how long now? Since I was 18? Like, you should know that's what's going to happen. And I do try, and some things do carry on, like cooking. This podcast, the planner, although that's been a whole cycle in and of itself. But yeah, I have to be reminded of, not necessarily like reminded of that joy, because I can think about it and be like, oh, that was fun when I tried that, and then just completely still be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I like a deadline. I'm good with deadlines make me happy.
Yeah.
I need that push. I need that like fine line, the finish line. I need that shown to me so that I can get there.
Right. Right. And it's almost like the joy is a memory that you appreciate, the joy that you felt in the moment. But it also is like, oh, when I tried this cool thing, I felt joy. I'm going to try another cool thing.
Yeah. Like more joy. Yeah. That's, my brain is an addict brain, and that's just how it works.
Yeah. And there is so much value in that.
Mm-hmm. If I use it the right way.
Exactly. Yeah. If we all could just use our assets for good and be gentle with the character defect side of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I want to, peel the layer of that onion and go deeper, because the way the character defect of quitting, and with the idea of the fuck it's, of just abandoning things, that has impacted projects, relationships, both friendships and romantic relationships. I mean, I am terrible at exit strategies. Jobs. I mean, it is baffling to me. And I wonder if it is, and I'm going to ask you to respond to this. Do you think it is, I don't know how to quit something, gently setting it down, or is it my feelings about having quit at all?
I don't know. I will expand on like my previous experience, like quitting jobs, and tell you how my brain works with that. And you can tell me if this answers your question or helps at all. So I cannot make decisions. I hate making decisions. Like, I'm constant decision fatigue. I don't know why. It's just, that's my whole life. Yeah. I'll walk around Target, pick up 50 things, put them all back, and then leave the store with nothing. Like, I can't commit to things like that. I don't, it just is weird. So when I'm deciding to quit a job, I will and all over it forever.
Mm-hmm.
And weigh the pros and cons and make a list, and then be like, oh, never mind. And then something else will happen and be like, no, I really need to quit, But once I make that decision, I'm done, and I am obstinate about it. Like, even if new information comes and the universe is telling me, hey, don't do that.
Yeah.
Once I've made that decision, it's done. It's over. I have no feelings about it anymore at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily like stress about the action itself. It's the making of the decision that is the issue for me.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's how I carry it out. And let's stick with the job examples. So one of the jobs that I left, I put in my notice, and my direct supervisor, which was majority of the reason why I was leaving, didn't send it over to HR for like a day and a half. So then I had to stay 2 more days.
Oof.
And I was like, all the efforts, all of them.
Yeah.
And I had planned it so like thus and such Friday was going to be my last day. And then I was going to have like a week or 2 off and then start my new job. Well, then I had to drive. And this is the point where I was driving like 45 to 60 minutes each way to get to this job. So now I have to drive there to sit and I literally had handed everything off thinking it was going to be that Friday. And they were like, yeah, if you ever want to be employable here again, you've got to work through the end of Tuesday.
What the hell?
And I was like, okay. And so I drove in the following Monday, just pissed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I was able to work remotely just because of how technology was set up. So I left my badge and a note that just said, I am going to be working remotely for my last 2 days. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah.
And I feel terrible how I handled it because I didn't have a conversation directly with that person. I sort of just like not dumped and ran because everything had been transitioned over. But like I didn't have a grown-up conversation with my direct supervisor or his manager, who sent me an email when she got in the office. She was like, I found your badge. What's up with this? Like, we are going to take you to lunch. I think this is really unprofessional. And I don't think she's wrong. But I feel like I just, like, what's my part in this? That I just never said, he jacked it up. I didn't want to report to, and I said it all at the end, but it all came out in a blurt. And she's like, oh my God, I didn't know any of this. Why didn't you say something?
Yeah.
And all I did was, I felt like I acted like a child. Like, I'm going to do, here's my badge. With literally nobody was in the office.
Is it a version to confrontation?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I get it. See, don't have that problem.
I'm going to jot that down for a topic later on.
Right? Oh my God, that would be a good one. But yeah, no, I
might need a timeout because I'm averse. I'm averse to the idea of this topic.
I am the opposite, and the only time that I've ever quit a job over like inter-employee issues is after literally having meetings with general managers and regional managers over. I think we had 3 separate meetings where it was me and her and 2 other parties that were like over us in the company trying to figure out how we could work together. Because I was like, this is not working. I can't work with her if this continues. Like, we got to figure it out. So I am like the opposite. I'm like, let's dig into this. I mean, it was nasty, Susan. Like, it was the dumbest shit ever. And I should have just let it go. But again, was not sober. Did not have that capability in my brain. It was like we both wanted to put the extra trash bag liners in 2 different places.
Right.
Or the way that the filing was done, we both wanted to do it differently. Or I would come in and she would have completely because we worked in the same space, but we switched off days. It was front office work in a medical office. And it just, I mean, it's control issues, obviously, on my end. And hers, too. I mean, we were both the same human trying to, have our own way. And she thought she was right. And I knew I was right, I wasn't, like, spoiler. But I was like, we need to hash this out. Because it was like passive aggressive emails, like, because we passed in the night. We never actually worked with each other. And I met with higher ups 3 times. I'm like, we got to figure this out. Like, I love to get into that because I feel like then there's a solution. Like, I can be free of these feelings if we can just work on it. And even back then, like, I would rather get into it bad with somebody and get it all out and me say my part and they say their part and we figure out what's going on than say nothing. Like, that feels nasty to me.
Yeah, it does feel nasty.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah, so it's sort of like when something is lower stakes, for example, there was, and anybody that gets my weekly email message, there's a recipe that I was trying that I used to make all the time in our old house. And when we moved to this new house, and I talked about it in the weekly message, that's why this is coming up now, is I couldn't figure out the settings on the oven because there's a new oven, and I kept burning the bread and it would overflow and it was raw in the middle. I'm like, well, clearly I suck. Like, I remember saying this to Paul, like, I just can't do this anymore. So I'm never going to make this bread again.
Oh,
and he was like, well, we could adjust this. We could adjust that. No, I just want to bake the bread. I don't want to figure it out. So I just quit.
Yeah.
I just quit. And I've just recently started coming back to it. And the bottom line was I was using a different pan, and glass apparently cooks different than metal.
Ooh, yeah.
But it does go back to perfectionism. If I can't do something perfectly, let alone, oh my gosh, I used to give away loaves of this for gifts and stuff. And if I can't do it perfectly, then I'm not going to do it at all. And I do it with just like throwing the pan at you.
Yeah.
And running out.
Aww.
And like I said, relationships have been like that. And, and I have not been able to set things down gracefully. And the turning point of that is when I quit drinking, because there was, and I see it as, when I was thinking about how to talk about this, I had a great metaphor, but then I slept and it's out of my ear. Not so much knowledge leaks out onto my pillow.
Right? Yeah.
So I actively tried to quit drinking for about a year and could not. And it was very startling because I've done some really great things in my life because I'm very disciplined and I've always been able to do what I want if I just, what gets measured gets managed, and I could manage myself in or out of any situation except when it was relating to alcohol.
Yeah.
And my options were to quitting and just roll down that slippery slope, or do it someone else's way.
Yeah.
And so so that's obviously what I chose to do. And it's so interesting now that listening to other people's messages about quitting alcohol now give me another perspective. Like, as I'm thinking, should I quit this job or, okay, real talk. I'm thinking, fuck this job. I
was going to say,
let's be real here. Okay, but if I'm having the same problem in this job that I had in the last job and the last job and the last job, what is the common denominator?
The killer is in the house.
That's right. The call's coming from the
Oh
house.
my gosh. Yeah.
And now I have a different set of tools and frameworks to kind of throw that up against.
Yeah.
So has your idea of perseverance or quitting changed since you got sober?
Oh yeah. And I mean, I was the same way. I could quit anything other than drinking. And, in the book that we read, it talks about how we are normally the most hard workers and extremely intelligent and able to exert our willpower on every other area of our life except for this. And that's why it makes it so maddening for people that have issues with alcoholism, because you just think, well, I can do everything else. And, I can seemingly control everything else. Why do I have an issue stopping this? And yeah, that was extremely humbling. And I feel like you have to get to that place to like want to try it somebody else's way too. Cause I was the same. I had dry time, where I was white knuckling it and just being an absolute shit human more than normal. And then started again and was hiding and lying, and then thought that I might have an issue, but didn't really want to quit. And then that was the turning point. Then I had shit happen and I did want to quit and I couldn't. I knew that I wouldn't be able to. And for whatever reason, because like I'm not that type of person. Like I am confrontation attracted. I am do it my own way. I've gotten in physical altercations with people my entire life. Like I love a good word battle. Like I'm right, you're wrong, period. Like, and if you could just figure that out,
Right.
everything would be
ahead
fine.
to me being right.
Yes, exactly. So for me to I had to get to that place where I was like, well, I'm obviously not able to do this. Like I've tried it my way for, I don't know, 15 to 18 years at that point. I'm done. Like I will do whatever somebody else tells me. And I feel like that's really lucky to have that insight.
Yeah.
And I definitely feel like I do try I mean, Luke would probably argue against me on this point and say, no, you don't do it very often. But I feel like I am more open to trying it someone else's way and realizing that I'm not always right, which is great. That's a good freedom. But yeah, it definitely changed the way that I look at problems and how I'm solving them. And I'm like not an island anymore. I can ask for help. I can listen to other people, which is still very new and interesting. But yeah, no, 100% it changed the way that I make decisions too. Cause like my brain doesn't work in a healthy way most of the time with the first thought that I think.
Right.
So I got to give myself a pause and say, okay, well, that's my first thought. What is the second one? Or can I bounce this off a person outside of this situation to see if it's okay or not? And am I actually making a sane choice here?
Right.
But yeah, it's like now I outsource a lot more of, hey, give me your thoughts on this, where before I would have never asked anybody because I knew I was right. Why would I need to ask someone their opinion on it?
Yeah. And we'll definitely have to talk about who those people are because we both have that board of directors of sorts. Yeah. And I think that the idea of, so when I got sober, then there's this whole idea or this whole, oh gosh, I want to say like camp that is like anti-big alcohol and not necessarily, maybe they do. I haven't really approached it, but just like almost like prohibition, wanting the alcohol companies to have to own up to some of the addictive messages, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I do notice when I'm in a group of people who's drinking more, and like I notice stuff like that. So I'm like, well, maybe everyone should get sober. Nobody should be drinking. And like there's this all or none thinking that I have, which is alcoholic thinking for me.
100%, yeah.
And so over the past almost 5 years that I've been sober, it's really been a softening of sorts for me to think, well, this is just something that's not for me.
Yeah.
So like the alcohol it's just not for me. It doesn't work for me. Yeah. If it works for somebody else, that's fine. Yeah. Like my husband could literally drink half of his whiskey and leave it if he doesn't like it.
He's an alien.
Right. And so I'm trying to apply that to something like, and I'm trying to think of an example, but maybe a book is not for me and I can just set it down. Maybe this craft, this hobby, I've had some volunteer opportunities where I spent probably about 3 years trying to find the right role in an organization I was volunteering with. And I just couldn't lock in where I was actually helping in a way that didn't want to make me rip my skin off.
Yeah.
It's just not for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that it's wrong and I don't have to run screaming from it. I can just say this isn't working for me anymore.
Yeah. I think that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Because I mean, that's weird. What it is. I bet.
It's like I'm having this conflict with myself.
Ooh. That's work right there. That's work.
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's so important. Like, and that's what I love about my opposite issue is it does allow me to try a lot of shit. And I get to dabble in lots of stuff and I'm terrible at 95% of it. and or I just don't ever start some of
Yeah.
it. But it's fun, and it doesn't like have any bearing on me as a human if I continue on with it or not.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and it doesn't have any bearing on you as a human if you continue on or not. I want you to feel that way too.
Exactly. My worth as a person is not based on how many projects I haven't tried from the number of things I've saved on Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely not. Like,
Yeah.
don't be sad that you haven't done all the DIYs on your Pinterest board. Like,
That's right.
it's okay. Like, to be honest, I mean, I'm not going to talk about anyone else. I'll talk about me. If I tried all of those, they would look like shit. Like, most of them would be terrible failures.
Yeah.
Terrible failures. I
Mhm.
exert that type of experimentation with cooking and trying new recipes. That's all the bandwidth I've got for that. Because
Yeah.
absolutely not. Because, like, I'll fail with abandon, but it's not like it feels good to fail, especially if you spend so much time like these DIYs want you to spend.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
end up spending more than it would have cost to just buy the thing that you're now doing it yourself on.
Right.
But yeah, no, cooking is low stakes at this point now. So, because I can just, we
Yeah.
can order a pizza and it'll be okay.
Right.
And it'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And the opposite was true when I was trying to mountain bike. Because you
Oh.
know what doesn't feel good? Wrecking down a ravine, crashing into trees. Like the
Yeah.
number of stitches and blood that
Ugh.
I've encountered. But the story I was telling myself was my husband wants a wife who mountain bikes with him. He doesn't give a shit. You know what he doesn't want to do? Go to the emergency room every Tuesday after we go to the trail.
Or have an ornery wife because she's hurt and is having to come back from that and can't
Right.
exercise the way she wants to. And yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know what? It's not for me. I
Yeah.
want to be that person. So it's like ideal me versus
Ooh.
real me.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not who I am. I
Yeah.
can enjoy being in the woods in a different way. Because you know when I'm not enjoying being in the woods? When I'm in a panic.
Oh, yeah.
Through
That's
the
like the
whole trail.
opposite. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I feel that way about like filling my schedule with things.
Yes.
I'm going through that
Oh my
cycle
gosh.
right now.
We talked about that before we started recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Ideal me is like, I'm going to have something to do every day of the week. And I did that for like the past 2 months. Like I had some kind of commitment outside of the house
Mhm.
every day. And like that sounds great for most people. Like if they've got that bandwidth or if they're an extrovert or if they have a job that's outside of the home that they
Yep.
then have like they want to cultivate interests outside of their job, which everyone should. But my job is my house. And I was literally not spending any time at my house.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm going to well, I can't get fired from my job. But I mean, if this was a regular job, I would be fired.
Right.
Like I would be fired. And then my attitude when I actually had to come home and do all the things that were starting to pile up,
Mm-hmm.
I would have been fired for my attitude. Like, this is not
Right.
okay. Like, yes, I'm not in a corporate structure and it's not the same stakes. However, why not look at it that way? Like, why should I not strive to be the kind of person that I was in my corporate jobs? You know what I mean? Like, I want to do
Yeah.
things to the best of my abilities.
And
So-
more so. It's
Yeah.
more important than if you're in corporate America.
That's how I feel. Yeah.
So it's almost like by overscheduling yourself outside of the house, you are quitting on the job that you
Yeah.
really love
Yes.
and means something to you.
Yeah.
And that's where I always want to swing it around to the purpose of this podcast, conscious contact with what matters,
Yes.
to really build an authentic life. Because if you don't know what that is, which,
Yeah. Or
You
if you
know-
lose sight of it.
yeah. So your early 20s, Genay, didn't embrace being a homemaker.
Absolutely.
But now that you have, you know what you need to quit.
Yeah, it's part of my value system, and I
there it is.
just lost that train of thought. I don't know if it was
Mhm.
willful or not. I haven't dug that deep into it yet. I'm still unraveling it.
Yeah.
But I realized like I'm making more work for myself because I'm gone all the time and then everything piles up and then I'm just instead of enjoying it
Mm-hmm.
to the best of my abilities and romanticizing my life and like doing the things that I know I love to do.
Mm-hmm.
It quits being like, let me turn on the jazz and do the dishes and fold the laundry. And it turns into I have 50 million things to do and I'm just going to run around like the Tasmanian devil and just be rude to everyone.
Yep.
Ugh.
Yep. That's it. And so we traveled last week, and even though we weren't in our home, there's laundry that piled up from our trip, and there's just activities of daily living that pile up.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to really remind myself this week, the theme is gentle reentry. It is not reentry like a
Like
cannonball, like Miley Cyrus, swinging through and licking hammers. And I found myself really prickly at Paul by Tuesday noonish, like, well, you're not doing this. You're not doing this. I'm doing all of this. Well, you know what? No one fucking asked me to do all of this by noon on Tuesday.
We are martyring ourselves.
Yes. Let's go back to what I literally wrote down in my notebook for my to-do list this week of gentle reentry.
Yeah.
When I find myself so angry, and this goes back to sobriety, I found when I'm that mad at someone else, there is something fundamentally wrong with me.
Yes.
My perfectionist character defects are running amok all over me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And therefore, when it fills me up, when my cup gets bumped and I'm full of resentment, that resentment in my cup boils over onto my partner and whoever happens to be in the way.
Yes.
And that's not fair.
No, it's not.
To either of us.
Yeah, no. And shout out to the book club. And if you have not signed up for that, please do. Because we're going to have another book and you're going to want to be there and read it. This one's about anger. And I mean, that is exactly what you just said. You just summed up that book in a sentence. Like, when my issues with myself start to come to the surface, I externally push that out. My anger at myself goes out to everyone else.
Yep.
And that's not okay. It's not okay to you, because then you're not dealing with your stuff and you're never going to be not angry. And it's not fair to the other person because they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
They're just standing there like, okay. Like, what the hell's going on?
Right.
But yeah, it's the whole quitting thing in general. I feel like it's other than like quitting a job, I think it's you have misaligned something with your value system somewhere. And it doesn't mean that's a bad thing, but it does mean like, hey, I need to look at this and see if it's ticking all the boxes. Like, is it sustainable? Does it line up with my core values? Is this the version of my ideal self, or is this like a rational version of me that's going to do this thing? And be able to come to a decision that's gentle instead of like how harsh quitting sounds.
Yes.
So that's the kind of like quiet quitting that I would like to see people talk about, is like, I looked at my value system and this isn't okay for me. So I'm going to either find a different job or have a conversation with my superior about this issue, and not be like a little twat, like it sounds like in a lot of these articles, and just, I'm going to only do my job responsibilities. And if they want to fire me or whatever, get over it. Why don't you have a conversation with them about the sustainability of your job and what's expected of you?
Yes.
Like, that's the healthy, adult, productive thing to do.
Yep.
Instead of this quiet stomping of feet, this quiet rebellion that you think you're doing. It's so passive aggressive, and I hate that. Like, I'm guilty of passive aggressive behaviors, but I don't like it. It makes me feel gross when I do it, and it makes me feel really gross when somebody else does it.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, why not? Again, I'm not confrontation averse. So I would rather just like, let's do this, let's hash this out. Like, why do you have an issue with me? I would love to talk about it. Maybe I need to work on it.
Yeah.
And if you tell me, then I can be aware of it and I can be a better human. Or if I'm making you feel some type of way, like, you have to tell me, because I am not psychic.
Right.
And let's work on that.
Yeah. Well, I just want to come back to something you said, and I jot down a lot of Genay-isms because I need them more than I want to point them out to everybody else.
I hope they hold up.
Healthy quitting means a misalignment with your values. And I wish I could have come up with something like that eloquent to start the episode, but I love that.
Well, that's
idea
you
of
in that statement, though. Because I didn't say that all together. That's what you heard, because I did not put it that beautifully. So that's a Genay and Susan co-creation.
We're going to need to rewind the tape on that. And
I'll see it in editing.
that is the value of having these conversations that I think I just love it.
Yeah, that's what's so helpful. I mean, for me at least, like I get so much because we are similar, but we are also very opposite on a lot of things. And I think that's so good. And that's the whole point of why I asked you to be the co-host.
Yeah.
Because I need that. I don't want to be in an echo chamber. Like, that's not healthy for me. And I don't learn if I'm not shown the opposite of either my belief system or how I handle things or histories or viewpoints or anything. Like, I need opposition to grow, like the friction smoothing out a stone type of thing. That's like a really aggressive version of that, but
Well, it's not when you think of looking at water flowing down a stream.
Yeah.
I think that is beautiful, and that is what changes the stones over millennia.
True that, Grand
Millennia?
Canyon. Yeah.
Millennia.
I think it can be
took
both.
2.5 years of Latin.
Girl, I took 4 years of French and remember 0. So do not.
Yeah,
Don't worry
plural
about it.
of millennium. And Bridget, I know you're watching and listening. You're going to tell me this because she took 4 years. So she knows the suffixes. Anyway, before I totally derail this great conversation, anything else you want to talk about quitting? Or should we quit talking about quitting?
Oh,
that is
I
off the
like
cuff.
that.
That's the kind of puns you're going to get on this podcast.
That's fucking genius. If you're thinking about quiet quitting, maybe take some self-reflective time and schedule a meeting with your superior. That's all I've got to say on that.
That's good.
Like,
see,
come on.
You don't always want it to be practical advice. That is some practical advice.
That is just practical. From personal experience,
Yeah.
that is what changes things, not me being a shithead.
That is so true. Yep. And I'm going to go back to, that someday I will make amends to those people that I did my janky quitting. But
And that might be a living amends. Like, you'll quit this job differently.
yeah.
Or you'll handle somebody coming to you to quit differently.
You're dropping bombs all over the place, Genay. This conversation was such a joy. But my official joy of the week, and I mentioned earlier that I had traveled. Coming home, I like to travel, but I love to just come home.
Yeah.
I can't even tell you why or what.
I think anybody that's left and come back, I think they know exactly what you mean. Because that is like a jewel of a feeling. That's so good.
It's like I can shut the door and exhale.
Yeah. It's done. You're finished. You're back. You're safe.
Yeah. And as much as I enjoyed drinking all the coffee in the Pacific Northwest and the amazing Dungeness crab cake Benedict, that's super different than the green smoothie I have when I'm at home.
Oh, yeah.
But goddamn, I just love my routine and I love my home.
Yeah, I feel you. We're the same on that note. Give me a good routine any day.
Yeah. So I can not do a routine.
Right? Yeah. Girl, yeah. We're a ball of hot mess. But it's sustainable and we're working on it.
That's right.
We can come back to it. We know
we don't have to quit. We can stop things or make adjustments.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's where we end. That's great.
Yeah. What about you? What brought you joy this past week?
Well, if you aren't watching this on video, sucks for you because you're not going to be able to see it. I found these delicious Peggy Bundy leggings.
They are.
I love her. Like, before I knew what I aspired to be Peggy Bundy.
Do you like her better on Married with Children or Sons of Anarchy?
Oh my God. She can do no wrong. She's amazing. There was another show that I saw a preview for recently that she's about to be on. Can't remember the name of it. Don't even remember what it's about.
I know what you're talking about. And I thought, that's a swing from
I'm
Sons of Anarchy.
Yes, it was very different, but I remember nothing else. We need to find that because I want to watch it. But yeah, found these glorious Peggy Bundy leggings. It makes me want to put on a pair of black heeled slides and a tight belt and a black shirt. But yeah, it's the little things, man. And they were on sale, and I'm like, you know what? Yes.
Yep. You're a goddamn cheetah.
Yes. Rawr.
Okay, we're ending on RAR. Oh, you know what? We're not going to end on RAR because
Okay.
I do want to ask people to share this episode.
Yeah.
We do want to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to do that is for everyone to share this with somebody else.
Yes.
Whether it spurs a conversation of, this is what I mean when I say I don't want to do something, or if this has sparked a piece of that conversation you hadn't thought of before. I just think it's a great conversation topic for anytime you meet up with someone and you want to talk about something besides the weather.
Yes.
So, what have you quit lately?
Yeah.
I heard this podcast about quitting. What have you quit lately? What do you think about quitting? You know, those are always questions you could start off with. So share the episode with someone. Follow us on social media. I'm at sustainable_Sue on Instagram. And Genay?
Yes, I'm at Genay Peavey. And the podcast, if you're like, oh my God, I want to see her leggings, is youtube.com/the Conscious Contact Podcast. Because they are doing handles now. So that's what all the links are going to be forevermore, is youtube.com/ and then the @ I'm tired of this freaking @
Yeah, that's super weird, but
it's for shorts and their short form content. They're leaning into that hard. So that could be a whole nother episode about how much I hate short form content.
Yeah. We're adaptable though, man. We're going to roll with it.
I don't know about that. We'll see.
For today, we're going to roll with it. We don't have to make big sweeping decisions to throw the baby out with the bathwater today.
Nope. We're going to have this long form content right now, and that's fine.
Fantastic. Thanks, Genay.
Thanks.